The year 2020 has come and gone, but what are the key takeaways from the year? A very eventful year indeed. I'm joined by Frans Cronje to discuss the key driving forces of the year that has just been. Frans, what is your key reading here of the year and some of the broader trends that emerged?
David, I think there's one big thing that this year will be remembered for from a South African perspective, and that's that the year was an accelerant for the trends that were already well developed and on display in the country. And that's true economically, it's true politically, and it's true socially. And what we mean by an accelerant is that things that would have, under normal circumstances, have taken 2 to 3 to 4 years to play out fully, played out in a question of 6 months as a consequence of the lockdown decision taken by the South African government. Now, right at the beginning of the year, we published this book titled The Rise or Fall of South Africa. And the book was in fact written in the previous year, in 2019. And its dominant thesis was that South Africa, again, stands at the verge of a great political and economic realignment. And we'd suggested that might happen in the election of 2024. It might happen in the election of 2029. The book's thesis, I'm confident now to bring forward. I'm more confident to bring it forward to 2024 than I was last year, because of the manner in which this extraordinary year accelerated the already existing social, economic, and political trends in our country.
So, Frans, how does this play out in terms of the economics? You mentioned the lockdown that was obviously hugely consequential for the South African economy. What are the economic trends that you observed this year?
Okay, well, the position going into this year is that the policies of the South African government were of a nature where it was not possible that the South African economy could stage a particularly strong recovery. We weren't able to generate very high levels of investment because of policies on property rights, for example. We weren't able to generate particularly high levels of job creation because of policies around the labor market, energy constraints. So South Africa's economically was in a gentle downward glide of sorts. The lockdown decision and the harm that did to the South African economy was simply a catalyst on top of the already bad policies, and saw from a growth perspective that we're now dead certain that South Africa cannot aspire into the medium term to the growth rates of emerging markets. We are fairly certain now that energy shortages are going to remain a factor pinning growth in South Africa to very low levels. We're certain, we are certain, we were certain from an investment perspective that South Africa is not yet in a position to make a competitive offer to major global or even domestic investors. And as a consequence, whether it is the growth rate or whether it is deficit levels or whether it is the debt ratios in the country, the position that we might have been in 3 to 4 years' time on the back of already bad policy is the position we're going to be in next year in any event.
France, politics is downstream from economics, and given the economic damage that has been sustained in South Africa over the last year, how does this play out in terms of the political environment?
Yeah, it's quite right what you say, David. Politics in South Africa, the bigger macro picture, is quite easy to predict because it has such a strong relationship to economic performance, and it's a point we've made to our clients, forever. We saw it in the first decade after 94. The economy grew strongly, job creation was relatively strong, living standards rose very quickly, real per capita GDP was rising at the fastest rate since the first half of the 1960s. And by the end of that decade, the 94 to 2004 decade, the ANC was 6 percentage points stronger than it had been at the dawn of democracy in 1994. And we understood out of that ANC voters are not liberation loyalty voters. They don't vote on that. It's quite a popular thesis in some of the analyst community and the media that the ANC voters vote on liberation loyalty. We said they're not voting on liberation loyalty. They're voting on their material circumstances improving. But the flip side to that coin was, and we knew it then, that if it should happen, that the ANC voters would that South Africa goes through a decade where living standards stagnate or decline, a very low levels of job creation, ANC support will suffer as a consequence. And lo and behold, at the end of the second decade or so of democracy, 2019's election, the ANC is sitting at 57% of the national vote. And that 57%, as you'd know if you'd followed our webinars and reports through the year, vastly overstates the actual standing of that party as a consequence of the fact that older voters tend to turn out and support the ANC in greater numbers than younger voters, who will become the dominant voting market over the next decade. Now, the economic setback South Africa suffered this year, jobs are 2 million jobs lost. We've won back maybe 500,000 of those. We'll win back a few more, but not the whole full 2 million. Government expenditure has to be cut given fiscal constraints, so that means service delivery suffers. This is just going to accelerate much more rapidly the already steep political decline that the ANC was on into 2019, and brings forward, in my view, the idea that the ANC could lose its national majority in South Africa, not just in 2029, but quite plausibly now in 2024.
Well, thank you very much, Frans, for that retrospective on 2020. Certainly a lot to look forward to in 2021 and through the medium term. That's all from me, David Ansara. We will be resuming our weekday schedule of daily posting in January. So do keep a lookout for regular content from the CRA. Until next time, take care.